Minister, I'd like to ask you, please, if the administration day that is currently being allowed to teaching principals will be maintained into 2021, and I suppose ideally beyond that. There's a very significant workload facing all school principals now, and I think COVID has only just highlighted how difficult that is, and there's a huge body of administration to be done. So just if you have some thoughts on that, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Concorla. I do wish to acknowledge the huge contribution, Deputy, made by all school leaders, particularly during this COVID-19 academic year, as they continue to work to ensure that schools can operate safely. The roadmap for the full return to school provides for comprehensive supports across a range of areas to allow for the safe and sustainable operation of schools. This package of supports provided totals something in the region of £557 million for the 2020-21 school year. And this includes funding for additional staffing, management supports, enhanced cleaning, hand hygiene, personal protective equipment costs and increased capital works funding for schools under the COVID-19 response plans. As part of this additional funding, specific funding, as you have pointed out, was provided to support principals and deputy principals who undertake teaching duties in primary schools. This funding provides each teaching principal with a minimum of 1 release day per week and release days for deputy principals in those schools that have an existing administrative principal for this school year. More than 1,700 primary schools with teaching principals have benefited from the increase in release days. These supports will remain in place for the remainder of this school year, the academic year 2020-2021, and the continuation of these supports will be considered as part of the ongoing measures required to support schools to operate in a COVID-19 context and to implement the control measure required to limit the spread of COVID-19 in our schools, in line with public health advice and the annual estimates provided for the next academic year.
Deputy Shanahan.
Thank you, Minister. As Minister, as you know, there's been a massive body of work, as you point out, being done by school principals, deputy principals and boards of governance. But I know you're expert in the area of education, but if you take any school with 200 or 300 pupils, you can just see the workload that has come because of COVID in terms of procurement. The other thing I'd highlight to you is the difficulty that's been in the sector in terms of recruiting people from assistant principal to take on the principal's workload, and it is being seen by a lot of assistant principals as an onerous task, and I think that's something that needs to be looked at in terms of the administration of the role and how it's done. And I think, again, and just one other thing, whether the department should be looking at doing some kind of ongoing training, be it procurement training or business consulting for principals. I think it's very unfair for some people to be elevated into a position where basically maybe they didn't want to take it, they felt responsible to take it, and they suddenly find themselves in the middle of all these other governance issues which they're probably not have not been exposed to before, and I think that's something that should be looked at going forward.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. I do appreciate, as I did outline and indeed as you reiterated, the huge workload really that has been placed on the shoulders of school leaders and indeed school communities. And I do recognise the importance of these additional days and how beneficial they have been. And indeed, I think we have seen now that they have been given the excellent use that they have been put to and the very necessary provision that they were. And I think that showed considerable foresight, I think, from the department in putting them in place in the first place. And I in no way underestimate the benefit of them, the value of them, and at this point, in terms of next year, as I say, we will review going forward the COVID-19 measures that are required for next year in the context of the budget as well. But I'm very, very conscious of the benefit of that measure. In terms of support for principals, there are a suite of measures in terms of supports for principals and recognising not just principals but deputy principals and the leadership role that they play within the schools. I don't for 1 minute underestimate their value and their importance in the school. Thank you, Deputy.
Shanahan.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate that. And as I say, I think one of the things that needs to be looked at is, regardless of the ongoing days and admin supports, I think just some continuous educational training, for want of a better phrase, in terms of maybe governance, and would be a great help to teachers, and some visibility into 2022, hopefully, that these days would be secured for the very onerous burden that the principals have to put up with. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. To conclude.
Thank you, Deputy. I appreciate the points that you make, and in terms of, in the context of COVID-19 as well, just that you would be aware that we've had a series of webinars in terms of the specific demands that are being placed on principals and school leaders in the context of COVID-19. Those webinars were also available for school community in terms of parents and children returning to school and all of that, and in the context of COVID-19 we will continue in that manner as well. Thank you.